Hello everyone, and welcome to another day of Thorgiween, our week-long celebration of all things spooky and scary in the world of video games, with us spotlighting a different game every single day. And you know, when many people think about horror, they think about isolation. They think about being by yourself, because if someone else is there, they can help you. You can rely on them. Threats seem much bigger and scarier when you're by yourself. However, multiplayer games are big business when it comes to the video game industry, so oftentimes creators have tried to figure out a way to merge multiplayer games with that horror aspect. And it rarely ever works. I mean, Capcom's tried it like 12 different times with Resident Evil, and they're currently trying it again with another game, rather than just, I don't know, making a new Darkstalkers. I'm getting off on a tangent there, but there is one game that did successfully. Dead by Daylight. I freaking love that game, and I have been planning for months now to talk about it during Thorgiween, because I have been looking for an excuse for the longest time to just really dive into it and talk about why that game is so fun and why it succeeds and why I enjoy it so much. And then the developers had to stick their foots in their mouths and embed themselves in a massive quagmire that got everybody mad at them and would make making a video about just really awkward and uncomfortable. So crap. Well, time to turn to the Plan B hat. Yeah, anytime that a video falls apart and I need to come up with something else to talk about, we turn to the Plan B hat. So let's see what magical suggestion it has for us. Just talk about whatever is on Game Pass. So Back 4 Blood is a thing. I'm sure no matter who you are or what type of games you enjoy, you've probably at least heard of Left 4 Dead. I remember back when I was in college, this was the game that everyone was playing. It's a fairly simple premise. You and up to 3 friends take control of 4 playable characters, and then you fight your way through armies of the undead. It wasn't anything overly complicated with a heavy story, but it was fun. It was a great game to hop on for either a quick casual match or to play for hours with your friends. Well, despite people asking for a new installment for years, the publishers Valve don't really believe in the number 3. So they kept saying no, leading to several staff members who worked on this game to split off, forming their own company and making what is in their eyes the spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead. Which basically means you can expect me to compare these two games numerous times throughout this video. Some people might think that's unfair to base your views on a game around the developer's previous installments, but trust me, if you've played Left 4 Dead, you will be doing that in your head non-stop as you play Back 4 Blood. The story of this game is, well, pretty much what you'd expect. There's some kind of a zombie outbreak, and you have to play as a group of survivors as they make their way from one spot on the map to a safe house at the end. They do try to spice up the zombies a bit by saying that they're actually possessed by some parasites from outer space, but honestly, that never really matters. That's only there so that way they have some kind of an explanation for why there are big mutant versions of the zombies, and oh, believe me, I will get back to them later, but for the most part, you can just ignore any kind of plot or story here. Which is odd to say, since it feels like this game is trying to put in here some kind of a plot or story. Unlike in Left 4 Dead, where you pick a map, and then you just have several chapters within that map, in this game, you start at Act 1, Chapter 1, and that leads into Act 1, Chapter 2, and Act 1, Chapter 3, and so on until you get to Act 2, Chapter 1, and Act 2, Chapter 2, and on and on. There is an actual order to which you have to play through this game. Sure, after you've played through a chapter, you can go back and replay it whenever you want, but you do have to play it in that order. But it never feels like any of that matters. Like, you do have a mission on each map that goes beyond simply surviving, which is nice. You do have to do things like acquire supplies for your base or rescue other survivors, but it never feels like any of that matters. It never feels like the mission that you had in this one chapter in any way affects the things that are going to happen in the next chapter. I mean, there is a little of that. In one chapter, you have to board up a library so you can use that as a base. Then in a later chapter, you start your mission inside that same library. So that was kind of nice. But if you're going to give us missions that have to be done in a specific order, why not do something a little bit bigger? Like, let's say in Chapter 2, I have to go and get an item. Then Chapter 3, I have to take that item to some scientist at a base. Then in Chapter 4, I have to defend that base while the scientist is working on that item to turn into a device that we can use against the monsters. Or it doesn't even have to be anything that complex. It can just be that with every single chapter we learn a little bit more information about these monsters that we're fighting, so that way it can all lead to us unraveling some mystery behind them. There's nothing really like that. Instead, we just go to a place, we comment on that place, then we go to a new place. And I know someone's going to say, well, that's how it was in Left 4 Dead. Yeah, but Left 4 Dead wasn't structured like this. Left 4 Dead was structured so that you hopped in, you played around, and then you were done. This is structured like it's all leading up to something, and it's kind of not. Now in this game, you can pick up to 8 characters to play as, 4 in the beginning and another 4 that you can unlock after you've played through the intro levels, with each character having different pros and cons. Some can heal more, some can carry more items, some can instantly break out of traps. It's a decent enough variety that you'll probably have your favorites, but if someone else picks them first, then you can still play as anyone else and you won't be lost. And again, to compare this to Left 4 Dead, yes, there are double the number of characters to choose from, but they feel like they have half the personality. When Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 came out, one of the things that really struck a chord with people were the characters. I mean, sure, they were just voice lines, you didn't really get big, massive stories with their backgrounds, but the bits of their personalities that we got carried them a long way. I remember people getting really attached to these characters. But here, well, each character has a personality, but they don't really feel all that special. I mean, you've got Evangelo, who is kind of the jokey young kid in over his head, but he never really has any lines that match up with the fun personality that they're trying to give him. And then you've got Doc, who is a doctor, and that's kind of it. Then there's Holly, whose personality is she has a baseball bat. Yeah, there isn't a lot to these characters. The only one I felt was really overflowing with personality was Hoffman, who is this crazed loner conspiracy nut, but yeah, let's just say after the last few years, I don't really want to play as a conspiracy nut who believes that this whole strange virus is actually some big government cover-up. Yeah, that's not really as funny as it was a couple of years ago. And I will say all this can be fixed down the road. You can tell this game has a long development cycle ahead of it, that it definitely has plans for future updates down the road, and that could include more dialogue for each of these characters, maybe giving them some additional missions that give these characters a little bit more to do than just saying, hey, we're here at this place. But considering the writing of all the NPCs in this game, I'm not really holding my breath. The dialogue of all the NPCs feels like it was carefully and perfectly crafted to strip away any and all fun from this game to make you realize how serious it all is, and yeah, that's not what this game is. This game is not the serious dramatic tension of a zombie survival film. No, this is bang bang shooty zombie fun time. But instead, we get stuff like,
look on the bright side. That's a joke.
oh wow, yeah man, I didn't realize how depressed everyone in this game was until you said that right now. It's very deep.
None of this is good, Vector. That's why it's called war.
And then there's your commanding officer, this general who runs this group of survivors, and he's the guy who gives you the missions and is the only real recurring NPC, and wow, this guy. It feels like they were going for over the top with him, but then they chickened out and didn't go far enough. So instead, he's just every generic bland military man, and his constant presence in your ear waters down any and all charisma this game is attempting to have. Now, I said that each character played differently, but not by much. No, where the real variety in this gameplay comes in is through the card system. Yes, if you had told me that the Left 4 Dead guys were going to make a spiritual successor, and they were going to make it one-part collectible card game, well, it sure would have been a shocker. But hey, I get it. If I had to fight off the zombie apocalypse, who better to ask for help than Obelisk the Tormentor? I will go ahead and thank you all for pretending like you're shocked to find out I'm a big, massive nerd with that reference. Okay, it's not exactly a card game. It's more of you create a deck of cards, and each card gives you some kind of a buff. And at the start of each chapter, you draw a new card with your buffs piling up until you hit the next act and your deck resets. And I'm kind of torn on all this, because on the one hand, you can really create some cool abilities. I see a lot of games out there that promise you that you can take a bunch of different buffs and combine them all together, but they don't really do anything. But these buffs are actually quite impressive and can totally change up your playstyle. For example, I suck at first-person shooters, so I tend to lean heavily into melee attacks. Well, in this game, I can equip a card that makes my melee attacks heal me, they're stronger, they're faster, and they take up less stamina. So I just load myself up on all these cards and start swinging wildly, and yeah, I can definitely feel the advantage that I get from all these cards. I can definitely feel how they all work together to play into my playstyle. But on the other hand, yeah, you aren't just given a bunch of cards and then told to craft your deck. You earn supply points after each mission, and then you spend those supply points on different supply lines, which are basically just a series of cards or cosmetics with a new supply line becoming available after you finish one up. Also, I assure you, as complicated as that sounds, I am explaining it far more clearly than the game did. Now, I will admit, I've been able to get a lot of cards by doing this, but I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones. This has the potential to be a massive pay-to-win mechanic. So far it isn't. So far it's not too bad. But considering that you have to buy a whole supply line before you can get the next supply line, meaning you have no idea what's in that next supply line until you've spent all your supply points on the supply line that you currently have, it kinda does feel a bit loot boxy to me. But also, it makes this game feel a bit more complicated than it should be. Because again, you can't help but compare this to Left 4 Dead, and how can I phrase this appropriately? Left 4 Dead was kind of dumb. Boy, I'm really digging myself a hole on this episode, aren't I? Okay, hear me out. When I say Left 4 Dead was kinda dumb, I mean that in a good way. You pick up Left 4 Dead, you turn it on, and then you just play. And that's the game. You run around, shoot zombies, get to the end, maybe have one or two other objectives to hit along the way. You're good. You can hop online with your friends, or you can just play by yourself. It is a total pick up and play type of game. But in Back 4 Blood, you turn this game on, and then you have to go around the base and get all of your cards, and then organize your deck. Then you can start the game. But you have to complete all the chapters, so you can't even really pick which chapter you want to play until you've done them all. Then you have to find people online to play with, because yes, you can play with bots, but you don't just simply turn on a thing that says play with bots, start the map now. No, it is a crazy, overly complicated procedure just to turn bots on, and even when you do that, it still probably will end up pairing you up with some strangers online. Then you have to choose your cards, and all I can think is, dude, I just want to jump into a map and start shooting things. No one take that out of context. But I can kind of understand all these issues and why they're in here. Because Left 4 Dead was a game that was great for casual players that wanted to just jump in. But that's not the reason that game survived for years and years and years, and is still popular to this day, and still getting fan-made updates to the game after all these years. That's because there were people out there who took this game seriously and formed teams with their friends and made a tradition to keep hopping on and playing with them over and over and over again. And the fact that this game really pushes you to play with people online and really pushes you to organize everything before each match, it feels like they're making this game specifically for that group of people that kept playing Left 4 Dead for years and years and years with all their friends. And that's totally fine. That was a large audience for Left 4 Dead. It's what kept that game alive. So making this game with them in mind is a totally fine plan. But it does make it a bit harder for the casual fans who just want to blow up zombies and enjoy it. And speaking as that casual player who just wants to blow up zombies and enjoy it, yeah, it did kind of turn me off how much this game kept trying to force me to play with other people online. Because I don't know if you've been online, but it's a whole lot of these people.
You wouldn't have to pay because you would have lost your first case. This is known as the court paradox. I can follow.
And what really leans into this mentality that if you want to play this game, you need to do it with a dedicated squad of other players is the difficulty of the game. Again, I am not good at first-person shooters. They are not my game of choice. I mean, heck, you want to know how bad I am at them? Take a look at this cutscene. Now take a wild guess at which character I was playing on this map. However, I've looked around at other people's reviews and videos on this game, and pretty much everyone says, yeah, this game's difficulty is all over the place. And I have to agree. It's not really that the game is hard, because there are some levels that are super easy. There are some levels that you can just walk right through. But then there are others that are just unrelentingly punishing, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Same thing goes for the length of each level. Some are over and done with in 5 minutes, but then there's other ones that go on for over half an hour. And again, it feels like they did this specifically for those players who want to hop online with their squad, turn on their mics, and they all organize everything with each other, and they just play for hours and hours and hours together. Because the insane difficulty curve from one chapter to another can make playing with bots or with total strangers online a complete nightmare. For example, I mentioned that there are special mutated versions of these monsters, and they've got all the basic varieties that you saw back in the Left 4 Dead games. You've got the ones that leap on you, you've got the ones that puke up a bunch of ecto cooler that attracts other zombies, you've got the ones that tie you up, you've got the ones with the big club arms that beat you down, then you've got some that alert other zombies, and you've got some boss monsters with big massive life bars. But in Left 4 Dead, when one of these popped up, it felt special because they were a rare occurrence. In here, the monsters are relentless, they just keep coming. Like, I can't prove it, but I seriously think that there is nothing that really triggers them. I think they just appear for no reason. Well, okay. There is technically a reason. The lore of this game is that there's some mastermind who is controlling them, and that mastermind plays their own cards before each match that alters which monsters appear and where and how, and they do this to make sure that you can play through the same map twice and have it feel different. But it just leads to, as I said, really unbalanced difficulty and even some incredibly stupid situations. Like, I was on one map where I had to fight a giant kaiju zombie, but that map had also had this card played that made flocks of birds appear, and if the birds got alerted, then they called in more zombies. And birds just happened to appear right in the middle of the ring where we were fighting this giant kaiju zombie. So I had to keep shooting at this thing without getting too close to the birds. Otherwise, I would startle them and bring in more zombies. Because apparently, my tiny little human would freak out these birds, but a 50-foot tall rock-covered zombie, nah, no problem, they're totally fine with that. But what I mean when I say that it feels like these monsters have no pattern or rhyme or reason to them is that if you kill one, it's not like you get a couple seconds of peace and then another one appears to take its place, or if you move into a new area, then suddenly there's some new monsters there waiting for you. No, they just keep appearing, no matter what you have or have not done. And yeah, this can be so brutal, it borders on being stupid at times. In one match, I was damaged, so I will admit I left the group. I know you're never supposed to leave the group, but I was severely injured, so I needed some help, and I knew that inside this tiny closet, there was a med kit. And at the med kits, you can fully heal back your life. So I ran away from the group real quick, went to the med closet, healed myself up, and while I was in that closet, a group of 3 giant clubber monsters appeared right outside of that closet and began pounding on me, trapping me inside this tiny room against just a wave of fists that there was no way I could survive. So they knocked me to the ground and I had to wait for someone to come and revive me. Not that anyone would want to revive me with 3 giant club monsters pounding away at me. And then suddenly, my screen started to fill up with green slime. And I thought, oh great, one of the big puke monsters must have spawned outside the door too. Only for me to look around and see that, nope, it didn't spawn outside the room, it spawned inside the room. Yes, when I was down, incapacitated by 3 big club monsters trapped in a tiny closet, the game decided to spawn out of thin air inside the tiny closet a monster that was bigger than the closet itself, whose power was to attract even more zombies to my location. This is a level of dickishness that makes me think this game must actually have another person on the other end controlling it, because no way could a computer AI be that much of an asshole. So okay, as I said, this game is unbalanced to say the least. But as harsh as I've been on this, I don't think it's a lost cause. Not at all. I mean, heck, it's not even bad. It just has problems and isn't nearly as welcoming for casual players as it is for people who have their own dedicated zombie slaying squad. But honestly, there is nothing wrong with making a game that isn't for the casual fans and is just designed specifically for those dedicated audiences. And heck, even though these aren't my types of games, I did get that occasional rush that I got back when I first started playing Left 4 Dead. So, if you were a fan of those games, if you still play it pretty regularly, but now you want something a bit different, something with a bit more variety, I think this works. But for everyone else, yeah, this might not exactly be the zombie slaying game you're looking for this year. As I said, it's very obvious that this game has a future ahead of it, that they do have a lot of updates planned. So, maybe next year, for Halloween 2022, this game will now have been polished to the point where it is the spiritual successor that these developers wanted it to be. So, yeah, Back 4 Blood, so far not off to the best start. But honestly, I have played live service multiplayer games that had way worse starts. Oh, so much worse. This thing has hope. This thing has promise. And like I said, you can tell when you play it, they at least made it for a specific audience out there. And I can feel like that specific audience probably would like what is here. And you can tell they have plans for the future. And honestly, I'm rooting them on. I hope that this thing continues to grow. I hope that it becomes a huge success. I hope that by this time next year, it's something really big and special. Because anytime that group of developers split off from the company they were working for, because that company wouldn't let them do the thing they wanted to, and now they get to do the thing that they wanted to, I always hope that works out for them. So by this time next year, this could be something really special. Got our fingers crossed on that. But let us know what you thought about this game in the comments down below, and you can always follow me on Twitter at ThorgiesArcade. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure that you come back for the next edition of Thorgiween, because the next game that we talk about is another one that you guys vote on. So come back next time to see what torture you guys have decided to submit me to. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time, and happy Halloween. You're all really mad about that thing I said about Left 4 Dead being dumb, right? I meant it in a good way, like the good kind of dumb.